Chloe, what made you come on the podcast?
Just speaking really, and just getting used to like openly speaking about things, and then obviously when she mentioned about someone else being on it with like a similar story, I was quite intrigued. I was like, yeah, I want to meet her.
I was just like excited to get onto it, and like I said, I haven't done anything like this before, so like just to get my story out and just to hear the different questions as well were good as well, because some questions haven't been asked before, and we do like media stuff like within like the sport, but it's the same typical questions. So like to get different questions and just to hear other sides of it as well is like, yeah, can intrigue me to get in.
Welcome back to Human or Athlete, where for the first time on the podcast we have two guests. Jordyn Smith, a GB Taekwondo fighter, and Chloe Watson, a professional boxer who's now 2-0, so big congratulations to her on her recent win. It's a fascinating conversation between two young female fighters who almost have identical career paths, from being incredibly successful as juniors to both narrowly missing out on the Tokyo Olympic Games, but now having both made that step up into the top level of their respective sports. And what's so amazing about the two of them is that even though they have these incredibly ambitious dreams and aspirations, they're also trying to stay grounded and focused on who they are and being themselves throughout this whole journey. And that's what's so commendable and interesting about this conversation. I do apologise about the audio error throughout it. It's not very good quality. We had a bit of a technical error whilst recording. But please enjoy the episode and check out our social media below. Welcome back to Human or Athlete. We've got Jordyn Smith, Chloe Watson. Thank you guys for coming on.
Thank you for having us.
Let's kind of both start with both of you, where you both started, why you are, or why you're here today, and what you've been doing. And Jordyn, how did you get into Taekwondo?
So I started when I was 4 years old. My dad took me along to a local club, which is about 5 minutes down the road from where I live. He took me along because he was worried I was going to get picked on for having ginger hair at the school. So it was a bit of self-defence, a bit to like build my confidence. And I remember as I first got there, it was quite loud. Like there was big kicks, like loud shouts, and I was scared. Like I used to always run away and hide behind my dad. And I think it was probably 2 weeks in, he said to me like, "Oh look, if you don't want to do it, like this is your last like kind of try, like if you don't like it, we'll try something else." And then ever since then, I don't know, I just never looked back, and I've just loved it since. And I started to get more competitive as I got a bit older. So as I was like about 12, 13, that's when I started to take it a bit more seriously. And eventually I got asked to move to Manchester to join the full-time GB Taekwondo team when I was 17, and I've lived here since. Yeah.
Was it always kind of your dream to like, ever since you've known it, to be like obviously a Taekwondo elite athlete? Yeah,
so I watched the 2008 Olympics, and Sarah Stevenson, she won bronze, and I remember watching it and thinking that sounds so cool, like look at those medals, like, and I always wanted one, and from then I was like, yeah, that's what I want to do. And then as GB Taekwondo started to become more successful, we got more funding, we got basically on the map of become them taking in athletes, making Olympians, and that's when I realised like, oh no, I could do this as a job, like this could be what I do, and that's always like my focus. And throughout school everyone said to me like, oh, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I was like, I want to be an Olympian. Like people would look at me like, all right, okay, like what do you want to do? And I've always said it like, no, I want to be an Olympian. That's what I want to do, and that's just always been my focus since.
Have you ever questioned it?
There's always been, obviously not every day is a good day, and there's been some bad days in training that I've struggled, but I think I always just say to myself like, why did you start? Like, and I've always said it. And my parents are very they're very supportive with what I do as well, so they're always there to help me. And we have a big support team at GB Taekwondo which help us a lot. So I wouldn't say there's been a time that I've doubted that I've actually want to do this. I've always thought, but there's always those like kind of bad days that put you down. But again, I just think like, why did I start? What would I want to do? And it's not, I want to be Olympic champion. That's it.
Our other female fighter, Chloe. Why did you start? What got you into boxing?
That's quite interesting hearing that story, because like just the similarities and stuff like that. But obviously my the start of my journey was a bit different. So I had like a twin brother, and I don't know what it was, like we were just so close and stuff like that, and I had a lot of like male cousins as well, like all around the same age, and we were just always fighting, and I was just getting involved with them. And my cousin, who's a girl like me, just a little bit older, who I looked up to, like she was quite boisterous too, so she wouldn't shy away from getting involved with lads, especially when it comes to fighting or football. So yeah, I was just really like always fighting with my brother. And I think it come to like a day where my mum and my dad was like, right, we need to get Curtis, which is my twin brother, into the gym, because he's getting picked on by his little by his sister. So sorry, Curtis. But so they took him along, and then he come back, and he was like to me, Chloe, you'd love it, like you should go. So yeah, like I started that. I started like, it was Thai boxing or kickboxing, something to do with that, but it was definitely a combat sport. And then obviously moved on to boxing at 8. I was completely unaware that I wasn't even aware that like boxing was like, I didn't really grow up like heavily watching the Olympics. Obviously at 8 I probably wouldn't have understood it. But it obviously wasn't until like the 2012 and like this big announcement that like female boxing's in the Olympics, that I was like, what, it wasn't in it before, and like boxing's in the Olympics. So that's when it all started to like come to me, with my goals and stuff like that. So obviously as that like big announcement got made, I just boxed for the first time at like age 11, which was quite hard because I was in the gym from like 8, and I was always like taking it very seriously. Like I always knew I wanted to be a boxer. I didn't exactly like go, oh my god, I'm going to be a boxer and I'm going to go in the Olympics like straight away. I just knew I wanted to box. Like I knew I really loved it, and I felt like I could really like express myself through the sport. So yeah, so it was more like I just enjoyed it and I really wanted to do it, and I didn't question where or what I can do with it. I just knew this is a bit of me. So yeah, as it all come up against like the Olympics and stuff like that, and then obviously I found out then like Natasha Jonas, who was going into the Olympics, she was actually went to the same high school as me. So they ended up bringing her in, and then I had a chat with her, and obviously that was a massive inspiration for me, especially in terms of like goals to go to the Olympics, because I'm sat speaking to someone who in a couple of months' time is going to be boxing and doing that, and that was kind of the pinnacle of like female boxing. So I was a bit like, well, obviously that is what I want to do. So I got to at 13 I won my first national title, and that was like a great experience. I think it was really like an eye opener, like for how much I just really want to do this and how much I love it. Obviously when you're winning, like you do feel good. And then I got to age 15 and I got selected to box for England, and that actually fell on my 15th birthday, which was mad. And that was in Serbia.
Isn't that like the 15th is like when you're allowed to start fighting?
Well, that's like what I heard, but I think it just changed so much now because boxing's grew so much like as a whole. So I think it goes off like the kind of the birth year like that you were born into and stuff like that. But in my head, I just felt like you've got to be 15, and it was just crazy the way like it came about on my 15th birthday. But yeah, that was a great experience, and obviously like, my dad ended up flying up to Serbia and stuff for me for that. But I was obviously like with like the England team and things like that, and just to get that experience at like such a young age, I was like, yeah, this is good and this is where I want to be. And then so after England obviously comes like GB. So obviously I was going for that, like throwing it back to the conversation I had with Natasha Jonas. And so I ended up going to the Youth Commonwealth Games at 17, and I come back with the gold, and that was in the Bahamas. Wow. That was a crazy experience. I love that. You don't go to many like nice places with boxing, but like I just got lucky with that one, I'm not gonna lie.
That's amazing.
I'm not gonna be like, yeah, I went to the Bahamas, and yeah, no, that's not a thing. That's not normally a thing anyway. But yeah, so like that was great. When off the back of that, I got on GB at 17, and like I ended up boxing for GB until I was just before I turned 20. That's when like I just turned senior the year before, and I hadn't been like selected for like the people to go to the qualifiers for the 2020 Olympics, which actually ends up being in 2021. And I just like, for me, I just needed to take like a little back step, because obviously like explaining all them years that I've just been going through then, like everything was like boxing, and you know, I just knew that like I loved it, and maybe I was a bit like, do I love it as much as like I did? and like that was a question that I kind of needed to like figure out, because obviously that's why I started. I didn't start to go to the Olympics or like do any certain things. I literally started because like I loved it and I wanted to obviously like try and make a life out of it. At an 8-year-old, I didn't realise that, but looking back, I noticed like a lot more. So I ended up taking a year out travelling, and I went travelling to Australia. And that was crazy because I couldn't have fit in at like a better time. Sounds weird because obviously it was so like wasn't the best for everyone else, but for me it just allowed me to like have a like really be able to like relax and think about like what I want to do, and end up still like boxing out there and stuff like that. But anyway, going back to it, because I'm completely just telling you my whole life story in this introduction, but that's when I really started to look at like female boxing and everyone turning over and doing so great, and I was like, yeah, hell yeah, that's what I want to do. And it's just more like individual to me, and I'm one of them people like I just want to put like 100% into it and also like receive like 100%, so if I'm getting them opportunities, like I know like I won't let myself down at the end of the day. But yeah, so anyway, so now I'm sitting here as a professional going through all the whole life story. But yeah, that's kind of my story, and that's how I'm here today.
We'll bring it back to the Olympics, because again, another similarity, I'm assuming Jordyn as well, just missed out narrowly on going to Tokyo. What was that like for you, obviously, because you've gone and taken a break, Chloe? How did you kind of deal with it? How did you feel about it?
So with Taekwondo, you have ranking, and the ranking to get into the Olympics is the top 6 in the Olympic weight categories. I wasn't actually in the top 6, so to get into the top 6 you have to gain points, and by gaining these points you go to competitions. The better you do in competitions, the more points you get on your ranking system. And the way it works is the top 6 in the Olympic weight go, and then you get, I think it's 4 for each continent. You get a qualifying event, and to be able to send athletes to the qualifying event, I think you have to either have like no athletes automatically qualified through the ranking, or say you only have 1 male, 1 female, you can take 1 male, 1 female to the qualifying event. So GB actually qualified 5 athletes just through ranking, which was obviously amazing. Like we had 3 girls and 2 boys go, and that's how like my kind of journey for Tokyo wasn't not really an option. Obviously it was. When I first started, like when I first moved into to Manchester, first moved to the GB Taekwondo team, that was always a goal, was to try and get to the Tokyo Olympics. But as I think it's towards the end of the Olympic year, well the year before, so it was 2019, the kind of ranking stops, so you stop getting points, and then that's when December 2019 is when they know, okay, that's who's going to go to the Olympics. Obviously with COVID happening, the Olympics got postponed, but that didn't change the ranking system because we couldn't go to competitions anyway. But to be fair, even seeing my teammates like train for the Olympics was still a big thing for me, because like we were there watching their preparation, like kind of watching what they're going through, and now like 2024 Olympics, that's the one I'm aiming for now. Like it's kind of like, okay, that's what I want to, like that's what I'm going to put myself through to make sure that next time like I am in that top 6, or I am getting taken to the qualifying event so I can go to Olympics. So that's the way it kind of works with the ranking systems and the way competitions work for obviously Olympic Games in Taekwondo.
How was it mentally not being really given that chance, like that opportunity to even give it your best shot to go?
Yeah, it was hard. I think I always, like, my motto in like when I was younger was like kicking my way to 2020. That's what I used to always say. And then as obviously I started to like kind of realise like, okay, it's not going to happen, like got to focus on the next ones. It was hard, but it was again like, okay, I'm still young, like it's not like that's it, I'm done, like I've missed out, I'm not going to the Olympics anymore. Like I've still got 4 more years of hard work that I can put in to get to these next Olympics for the Paris one. So it was hard at first, but it was kind of like, no, you're still young, like you've still got all this time to go through what you've been through, and then if anything it just kind of like motivated me more, because it was kind of like I was kind of annoyed. I was like, well, why am I there? Like I should be there. And then it was like, no, okay, relax, like calm down. You've got so many years left. Like just make sure you're on that team for the next one.
I mean, I think it's so important, especially as young athletes, to be able to not get caught up in yourself and your image of, yes, you're doing really well, like obviously both of you incredibly successful in that, teenage age groups or that teenage obviously competitions, and then not to get carried away. And like obviously in football, when you get given the money, you get given all these kind of egoic kind of things, here's the status, here's the Instagram, here's all the money you can get and the girls and the cars and whatever you want, and they obviously get so carried away by all of that and they lose themselves in it, and then you expect, I have to play next week, or you put even more pressure on yourself. And by taking that time to kind of zoom out, look at the bigger picture, go, okay, this is a development process, this is me getting to the top, I'm around the top 5 or the top 3 girls who are obviously medaling and doing really well at the Olympics. Let's use that as a positive, let's use that as a bonus, and then if I can get into that top 6, where am I going to be? I'm going to be pushing for the medals as well, right?
Yeah.
How was that for you, Chloe, with the Olympics?
It's a bit different for me, because it was a bit like, obviously it was harsh, it was a very hard time for me, but it was also it also enabled me to kind of reset and just readjust and see what there is. And I am lucky that there is so many opportunities in female boxing now, so if you can kind of take different paths, and it just enabled me to kind of look at the bigger picture, like you said, and do what makes me happy, really. So
you decided to take a year out. That was take time off in COVID to go on to Australia, right?
Oh, well, before COVID, so I ended up going away, and it was one of the best things I've done, really.
So obviously, move on from the Olympics. What's it now? So you've gone pro in the last year or so. What's it like, kind of achieving that dream of being able to call yourself that, look at yourself like that? What's the reality of being a professional boxer now?
Really just getting your name up there and letting people know who I am, and obviously it's the entertainment industry as well, so I'm there to entertain the people that are coming to watch me. But I think it's great for me, because obviously I've got a lot of people that do want to see me fight and haven't been able to see me fight when I've been boxing around the world and stuff like that. But obviously I'm training with Ricky Hatton, so I can't really get much better support than that, and better advice too. So I'm enjoying my training there, and obviously we're just taking the correct steps to get to the top, and obviously the top is to become world champion, and I do want to be mingling in with the names of, obviously you've got Savannah Marshall, and you've got all these great big names. You've got Natasha Jonas, she just won a world title the other week. So eventually that is where I want to be. At the moment I'm just looking to take the steps to get there, really, and like you said, just enjoying the process too.
Have you spoken to Natasha Jonas since, or sparred with her or anything, been around her at all yet?
A completely different way, but
okay.
I did speak to her, I bumped into her beforehand, and she felt great, to be fair, and she just told me if you need any help, I'm here if you need any advice. So I've got a lot of people around me who I can turn to for the correct advice and guidance and stuff like that, which obviously I'm grateful for. And
does it come with added pressure now, being it's your professional record, it's this is what you're doing now?
Yeah, it can do, but at the same time, when I was an amateur and obviously I was going away, you'd weigh in and then you could box 5 times that week and you don't know who you're fighting. So the likes of training, I enjoy it a little bit more, because I know when I'm fighting, or sometimes you don't know until a couple of weeks before, but you've got all this time to train for one fight. So for me, when it comes to this is just my experience from my debut, because obviously I've only had my debut in November, but I had so much time to train for one fight that I was come that night, I'm not gonna have any excuses to why I'm not fully prepared. I don't care who's in front of me, I'm turning up the best me, and I think that's what I'm enjoying the most, to be fair, is you get full camps, and like I said, I do to put 100% into my training and everything that I do, so it's just one of them, really.
Do you find it obviously different? Taekwondo is all about the points and everything like that. do you ever think there's a part of you that wants to entertain, that wants to kind of get, you know, the golden point? What is it, the golden win or something like that?
Yeah. So like obviously every competition for us, like it's a bit different. Like we have probably around 5 fights in one day.
Wow.
So it's like pretty hard going, but it's that like it's more mentally. Obviously you have to, if you get through one round, it's like, okay, reset yourself, like you've got another one. And I think Taekwondo as a whole, like I think it did get more popular after the Tokyo Olympics. One of our athletes, Latel Mohammed, he was on, I think it was BBC Sport, he was like commentating, and we got a lot of good feedback like from just him being there, and I think that kind of put Taekwondo's like name out a bit more. So I think for me, like it's more to inspire people to get into it, so like to entertain as well, like it's obviously great, and it is an exciting sport to watch because it's like anything can happen at any moment, and 1 minute you could be winning, like you could be almost like gapping the person. We say gapping, so it's like 20 points or more is basically like a point gap, basically. And then so you could be like winning by so many points, and then next minute you're knocked out, like probably a bit similar to you as well. But yeah, so it is obviously entertaining, but I think for me it's more like to inspire people to like get into the sport, or to just get into any kind of sport, because I think obviously sport is such a big thing like nowadays, and it's just coming up as well. So I think that's probably for me is like more inspiring people to get into it.
How do you inspire people? Is that through winning? Is that through knocking people out in spectacular fashion? Like what are your methods to inspire people through Taekwondo? I
think obviously winning is great, but I think it's also like, I think the loss is important as well, like coming back from like hard times, like I've had injuries in the past that it's kind of to show like, well, it's not the end of the world, like I'll come back stronger. And especially with like the younger generation now as well, like these kids do look up to like Team GB athletes and GB Taekwondo, like more specifically, and we have kids coming in from schools like wanting to try it out, and it's more to show them that it's like, it is cool, like it's not just like, it is obviously a lot of hard work, but like who doesn't want to get kicked in the head for a living? That's what I like to say. So and then the opposite, like who doesn't like kicking people in the head for a living? So yeah, it's just to put out like the journey of going through like what like I've been through for inspiring people. So whether that is winning, or whether that's coming back from maybe a loss, or like a bad day at training, and it's just like showing like how much I'm like pushing myself to obviously achieve the dreams that like I want to achieve.
Yeah, like I always kind of say that like there's no coincidence that the people who are like at the top of sport and who have the most incredible kind of like successes and stuff like that also have this like incredible story behind them. Like there's no coincidence that the chapters in their book and their autobiographies are like the ones you can't put down, that inspire you every single time, because they got up every single time and they kept coming back. And I think that those journeys are what it's about. And obviously you want to get the world title, you want to get the gold medals, but that journey along the way, as cliche as it is at the moment in the self-help world and everything, but it's like that's what it's about, and that inspires other people, and that makes, I always say, like, this is just a chapter in that book of yours, and it's going to make that book even better, and more people want to read it and inspire more people at the same time. So that is like, I mean, yeah, I think it's an amazing purpose to have. Does that inspire you to get up the next time, so on and so forth? Yeah,
so I think like for me is, I've always looked up to some of the athletes that are even still in, some of my teammates now. When I was younger, I always looked up to them, and I always thought, like, probably looking at them like, oh, that's so cool, like that's so fun, like they must basically have it easy. And then it's not till you actually put yourself in like those shoes that it's like, okay, this is a lot harder than I thought. But
is that like the likes of Jade Jones?
Yeah, Jade
Jones,
like? And yeah, it's like, it's amazing to train with them anyway, because it just shows, like Jade, for example, she's like double Olympic champion, and it's like to see what she put herself through to get to that, like the motivation she had, the determination that she went through, the commitment, like it just shows that there's so much like behind closed doors that you don't realise. And then to even just be training with her is like motivating anyway, because it's like, okay, she's double Olympic champion. If I train like this, I could be double Olympic champion. And that's what I always think is like, you're training with your role models. Like how can you not be like excited about it? Yeah.
Do you feel the same in terms of being around Ricky Hatton, being around that kind of the people and the calibre in that gym?
Yeah, I feel like there's always someone, isn't there, like in a certain environment that like you look up to. Like obviously when I was boxing from my gym in Birkenhead Adventure, there's a guy called Sean Dodd, also known as Masha, and he was like, he's a very good professional and everyone loved him, and obviously everyone in the gym will look up to him. And then obviously it went from being up GB and then obviously having like the amazing role models to look up to and training alongside Anthony Joshua. And then obviously now as well, I'm training being trained by Ricky Hatton, and then you've got like also the lads who are on their own journey too, and like we're all on obviously similar journeys and we're all at different points in our journey, so yeah, that's inspirational too. But I feel like I've always been in like a positive environment, so that's something that like obviously like helps me grow as a person and as a boxer too. So
how important is that for an athlete to have an environment around them?
I'd say it's obviously very important, because you know like you said, like you've just said then, you're seeing all the work that these people are doing and you're seeing what they're achieving, and then you see that they're human as well, so you speak to them, you speak to like Anthony Joshua, and you realise he's just another human being, where people on the outside world, people like my mum, wouldn't look at him like he's just a normal human being.
Just literally just
honestly, just chilled, like just having a normal conversation. I can't say like I was absolutely like, oh, why are you mate? What's going on? Like obviously you do see him in his own space and just doing his own thing. He's doing similar sessions to you, and like when you look at that, you can't help but be inspired, because like he's been in the same setup and stuff like that, and you know, like if you're gonna do it and you're gonna push your body through it, like there's no saying why you can't do what he's done. It's exactly the same like with me being trained by Ricky. Obviously he's training his boxers in the way that he was trained himself, so you know, there's no saying why we all can't get there.
I think, you know, the old Denzel Washington thing of like, you know, you surround yourself with 4 intelligent people, you'll be an intelligent person. You surround yourself with 4 selfish people, you'll be the same, whatever. So I think it is one of the critical things. And Jordyn, obviously you've got into Team GB, like you said. What has that been like, you know, coming in at, was it 17? And then having like, you know, coming into a gym like that around the people that was, the coaches, GB obviously, in the last maybe 10 years, obviously blowing up Taekwondo wise. What was that like?
Yeah, so when I was younger, so probably I'd say from like 14, I used to go down to Manchester for weekends, because in GB Taekwondo they have a programme called the Development Programme, which is for junior athletes that basically are looking to become full-time athletes. And it's a really good programme anyway, because it just kind of, first of all, you get to train in the gym that obviously all these Olympians train in, which is exciting anyway, but you also get that kind of chance to train how they would maybe train. And so I done that from probably when I was about 14. And then when I got to around 16, 17, I was actually asked to do some extra training sessions with the senior team. So I got invited by a couple of the coaches, and I would only go down for like a couple of days and train like in with them. And it was that change of like kind of atmosphere, that going from like a kind of junior into the senior team was like, it was crazy. Like it was just like, okay, I need to like grow up now. Like that's how it felt. And when I eventually did get the opportunity to come to Manchester and like move to Manchester, I was still sitting my exams up in Scotland. So it was kind of balancing that like school and training. So what I had to do was I moved part-time. So I used to train 3 days in Manchester, and then I'd go home and do 2 days at school to do my exams. And I managed to like finish all my exams, and I actually sat my English one. We call them hires in Scotland, but they're A-levels here. My English one in Russia, I sat my English exam after the European Championships. I had to like sit in a room with like my coach, who had to go through all this like paperwork to become like an invigilator, to be like an exam. I had to sit and literally had to sit in a hotel room and do my exam. And once I'd done that, it was kind of like, what is this life? Like, literally, it was crazy. And once I done all my exams, like, it was kind of like, okay, now, like, that's like a kind of weight lifted off my shoulders. I can now focus on Taekwondo, doing it full time. And that's when I moved to Manchester fully, which was, I was still 17 at the time, but yeah, it was kind of like that change of like, okay, now I need to grow up, I need to mature. Like, this is like, basically, if you don't train hard, like, you're going to get shouted at, like, kind of thing. So that was the kind of change for me, was obviously that just transitioning into from that junior into the senior, more like mindset wise, not even like physically.
It must be like so hard not to get carried away, because like once again, when you're younger and you obviously things are kind of coming away from sport and people are like, oh, he's the footballer, she's the boxer, she's the taekwondo athlete, whatever, all these kind of things. And it's like you want to get carried away and just do that full time as a kid. That's all you want to do, and then having to still come back and sit exams. I can't think of anything worse. But it sounds like a pretty fairly like smooth transition in that you've obviously done 3 days and you're into full time.
Yeah, like we have, like I said, like we have a lot of support at GB Taekwondo anyway, and they helped me a lot with even studying times. Like I had like study rooms that I could use in the gym, like between sessions, which was really good. We have a lifestyle like officer who basically she helped me a lot with my training times, like my training schedule that I could slot for in between for study times as well. So it was like I did get a lot of help with it, which was really good, because that was one thing, like my dad was quite strict, was saying like, no, you're not going, like you need to do your exams. And then basically like our boss, like our manager was like, no, we can make this work, like we can get her to come a few days a week, and if she needs to miss a whole week of training, like because she's got an exam, that's fine. Like we basically just want her on the team like as quick as we can.
That's brilliant.
So yeah, it was pretty smooth transition for me, which was good.
That's so good as well, like you were able to do that.
Yeah.
Like, to be fair, like still study. I didn't really study.
Yeah.
I was like, I found it hard in school anyway. I had to end up getting my GCSEs, but like when it comes to like A levels and stuff like that,
The class were too enticing.
Yeah, I was that person that you were just describing before, just wanted to do the other thing. But yeah, that was just my thing. So it's good to hear like your side of things.
Yeah.
Obviously, I do speak to a lot of athletes who like are really intelligent as well, and like they like one of my best friends in boxing, Georgia O'Connor. Like she went to uni and stuff like that, and she's really intelligent, but. So she was able to like mix them both, and then like obviously I look at my own journey and I'm like, that just wasn't for me. But then I look at other, I just feel like everyone's different, but it is good to hear that like obviously people did like carry on with like their education as well when it comes to it.
I agree. I think it's like, especially for example you hear in football, there's like a couple that do it, and I think it would be a really cool thing to get more athletes that are like open about it. As a really big Chelsea player, like Tomori, who's like obviously got his life set for him, he's chilling, whatever, and he's still doing like an open uni degree. And it was just like to see that when he doesn't need to do it, it's really cool, because people obviously look up to these guys and look up to you guys as athletes on those kind of things, and it's not going to be everyone's cup of tea, but it's also going back to kind of the mission of the podcast, and that yes, you've got to do your sport, yes, that you could be doing that full time from like you're 12 years old or whatever. You see these crazy stories where people just sack off everything else and do it, but it's also your careers end at your 30s or whatever in that way, and then what are you going to do? And again, football's maybe one of the few sports that you can retire if you're in the Premier League or the Championship, but if you're not, and you're not winning world titles with millions and millions of pay-per-views, it's like it's not a possibility. But yeah, that kind of brings me into the topic. Obviously, it was International Women's Day yesterday. We're on topic, we're on trend. What is it like? Obviously, we know why both of you obviously are enjoying your fighting, why you both obviously have followed it as a dream, as obviously a career now. What does it mean to you, or start with you, Chloe, to be a female fighter? You're kind of obviously the first generation that I'd say probably coming up in the last 10 years, both sports realistically, where females are coming through and making their mark, and obviously there's slowly obviously more money, the culture's changing. What does it mean to you to be a female fighter?
I feel really grateful, because I feel like it is growing, and I feel like I am a part of that, and I feel like I'm very fortunate to also add on to it, but also have the opportunities that I have now. Because I look at someone like my nan, for instance, you know, and like she's a very big character, and like we share a lot of similarities. And like I really look up to me now, and just the way she is, how strong she is, how determined she is. And I look at her and she says, "Oh, I'd be a world champion boxer." And I think like I look at her and think, do you know what, you really would. And it's a bit sad that like, you know, the opportunities weren't there. Not saying that she would have. I mean, she said she's still in football like others, just like I did. So we share similar stories. But yeah, so like there wasn't really any opportunities to really get like her teeth like stuck into a certain sport, whether that be boxing or whether that be going to like uni and like getting stuck into something like that. You know, I feel like the opportunities weren't there. It's like at her age, like she was kind of just looked at to kind of have a kid and like raise them, and she's done an amazing job at that. But at the same time, she's such a big character that she could have done like a lot more. And like I see that in her, and I'm like, I'm so lucky that like I'm able to go after what I want and do what I want. So yeah, I feel really grateful for it.
Sure.
Yeah, I think obviously being in like a fighting sport isn't the girliest thing to do. It's not like, but it's more like, okay, don't fit into those stereotypes. That's what I always think. I always like to be the one that like proves people wrong. And I think for me, like I've never really had, like you said, like the generation now, it's not really like, oh, you have to do this like as a girl. Like it is kind of more free. And for like I said, like for me to get into Taekwondo was to build that confidence and for a bit of self-defense as well. And I think it's just so important like that you do take these opportunities, because especially when I was younger, like my mum wanted me to be a dancer, and she was determined. She used to do dancing when she was younger. Like she used to take me to ballet and tap, and I, honestly,
one of those parents.
Not one of those. And I would cry every time. Every time I'd cry and beg her, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. And my mum was like, no, you like it. Keep going. And my dad was like, just put her into fighting. Like my dad used to do karate when he was younger. And he was like, come on, we'll just like try her. And my mum was like, oh, but like my little girl, like my little baby, like and then obviously getting kicked in the face was the choice for me rather than dancing around the stage. But even now, like my little sister does it as well, and my dad, he's a coach for my old club that I used to train at. So even my mum does it now as well. She does it, yeah, she does it like for the fitness side of it as well. And even she said like it's very mixed. It's not like oh, there is more boys there or is there men there. It's like no, it's completely mixed. And even in competitions now as well, it's very equal, and I think that is nice to see, because it is seen as like, oh, it's a fighting sport, like why would you want to do that? But it's kind of like I said, like I want to prove people wrong, because I want to show people like, oh no, I can do it, like I can fight. Was it
male dominated before, or has it always kind of been mixed? Because I don't know about the history of it.
Ever since I've known, it's been pretty mixed. I've always looked up to Sarah Stevenson, who got the bronze at the Olympics, and obviously she was a female fighter, but for me it wasn't like, oh, I looked up to her because she was a girl. Like I looked up to her because she was a good fighter. And it's not like it's for me it wasn't like there was always like male athletes, or even on like my team, like before, like there was more female athletes on the GB Taekwondo team than there was male. It just worked out. Now it is pretty equal with new athletes coming in and stuff as well. So it wasn't very male dominated from how I've like experienced it. It's always been pretty equal, and it's always been quite an equal sport to like be involved in.
In some ways, like from my experience, Jay Jones and those are probably more famous than the males in that sport, which is kind of crazy and I think a really good thing. And it's almost like a difficult question to ask me, because I'm like, I don't want to ask this question because it doesn't. You guys are fighters, full stop, let alone female fighters, and it's brilliant that this generation is seeing it like that. Chloe, obviously yours is a lot more male dominated and known pretty much purely as that up until recently. I think of like Nicola Adams obviously making a huge change in 2012 with that. What's that like, being surrounded in that sport? And it's probably not as far ahead as Tokyo in terms of the mixing? Tokyo Taekwondo.
I don't know. I haven't really don't think of it like that. Obviously, like it has its advantages and disadvantages. Like you hear of a female fighter in like your local area, and it stands out a little bit more because it's a bit like, what? She's a girl and she can fight, and then it's she's a girl, and then you see me fight, and it's like, wow, like I like that. So I think I like that side of it, and I think that's starting to become like a more like positive way that people are looking at it. Obviously with it growing as well. But like I've never really like experienced any, negative kind of comments and stuff like that. I did actually go to like an all girls school too, so like it was more so that like I think people like to look at it that like I had my own little thing, and I think this is how I looked at it, so this is how I just think everyone else looked at it. But
just like blinkers on, I'm doing my thing, no one else.
I was just doing my own thing, and like my mates ended up like jumping on board like a little bit with it. So like when like I was eating healthy and stuff like that, because I actually I lost like when you looked at me, like you could see that like I lost weight, and I got like a lot fitter, and like my body started changing in like such a positive way that I think like all my friends and stuff and people around me, they didn't really give me like much stick for it, like not that they would, but they were like, not many negative comments but like said anyway, because it was a bit like, there's someone that's trying to do better for themselves, and obviously I think like the way I spoke about it and stuff, and it was something that I said that I wanted to do from like first going into like high school, that like everyone just kind of like had a positive look on it, to be fair. But obviously you do get like the negative stuff as well, but I think like it's not really like a massive thing because of how much it's growing, and people are just proving that females can fight, and females like sometimes like the female fights like a lot more explosive and entertaining than the male fights. You look at like Katie Taylor and stuff like that, and people like there's so many more eyes on female boxing now, which is great. And for me, I like to be able to say, yeah, I'm a girl, but like I can do it. Like I think I've got the confidence to be like, yeah, just watch me box.
I love it. It's like that was one of my next questions, was like there obviously are doubters and there are people hating on it and saying a girl shouldn't be getting kicked in the head or punching someone else in the face. Like there's a stigma around it, but I think it's just really cool to see that you're both just like, again, blinkers on, doing your thing, tunnel vision. This is what I care about, it's what I'm passionate about. Let's like beat some more people up. Has it been okay for you in terms of positive, like in terms of dealing with people doubting it and stuff like that?
Pretty similar to me. Like I've not really experienced any like negative comments or anything bad towards like being a fighter. Like even going back at school, like people would come up to, people knew me at, like especially in high school, they knew like, oh, she does taekwondo. Like they kind of knew me as that. And even at school, like I would get like awards, like from like sports awards, and I think it was always like, oh, Jordyn does taekwondo, like everyone knows that I do taekwondo, and I'd get the odd comment from like the odd boy like, oh, do you think you could kick me in the head? That's like I've not nothing really negative like towards it. Like I think one of the things like people experience, I would say, is the male and female game is a lot different in taekwondo. It's started to get better now with the way the rules have changed, but the male game used to be a lot like more stronger kicks, and like that was like more explosive and stuff like that, whereas the female game was a bit different. It was a bit more like tactical, and like there was like comments like, oh, like she fights a bit like a boy, and then that's the only kind of things that like you would like hear, because for me, I've always never really, well, in my category, I'm not the tallest person. I'm always like really small, so I did have to revert back to being like more explosive and getting on the inside and then working to try to get my points from there. So like people used to say, oh, like, she fights a bit like a boy, and those kind of comments is like, oh no, I just fight like me, like I just fight like Jordyn Smith, and my dad used to say the same. He used to be like, oh, just like ignore them, like prove them. Well, yeah, if I fight like a boy, I fight like a boy. Like if I fight like a girl, I fight like a girl. There's not a big thing between it. But now, like as the game has changed a lot, the systems, like the scoring systems and stuff have changed, the way the rules have changed. Like even the male and female game is pretty similar. I wouldn't say there's like big differences that like there's still female athletes that get knocked out. Like it's not like people say like it's always like quite flicky, like you don't really like kick hard or anything like that. But now it's like I know there's people that get knocked out in the female game as well as the male game, and that's like for me it's always been like it's pretty similar. It's not there's not too much of a difference.
On that, it's like what I kind of always think about in that way is like, can you both find a way to use that and turn it into like proving a point in the odd stigma or in the kind of the stereotypes online and stuff like that? Do you use it as motivation, as like a dark energy that drives you both to prove a point?
I kind of, like I said, like I just kind of like focus on me and just like turn up and be the best that I can be, and if they've still got something to say at the end of that, then like that's kind of their problem, or maybe they're stuck in like old ways, but that's kind of got nothing to do with me. I do think like people are looking at like female boxing as like just boxing in general, like hopefully that just carries on growing, and hopefully like I can do my part in that, so like when people do watch they can be like, oh, she's a girl and she's boxing, this is just boxing now, like this is normal. Like I'm boxing on the 2nd of April, Savannah Marshall's head of the bill, and there's like, I'm pretty sure like there's like 3-4 female fights on there, so, and it'll be like a pretty packed out arena too, so it just shows like how much, like, because me and we're talking like last year there would have been like one fight, like one female fight, and now you're looking at like 3-4 and you're like, well that's crazy, because just how much it's come.
What does drive you then?
More just like growth, I think. I don't know, it's like, it's hard, like you said, like when you said like people were looking at you and you were saying, like she does Taekwondo. It's like the same, like I've always just done like boxing, and I just love it, and I think obviously I've got my goals like around it, and that drives me. But yeah, like ultimately it comes down to like growth.
In that way, so if we kind of break that down, so obviously you've got the growth, you've got the goals, what kind of comes to my mind, and you kind of said it earlier as well, is this, you've got this, the perspective you have on it is very present, you're very much always enjoying the boxing is what comes across.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really cool mechanism to have in how you approach the sport and how you approach life in that way, because you kind of keep coming back to, this is what I enjoy, this is my thing, full stop.
Yeah.
There's nothing attached to it, there's no like, this is my thing, but what if I don't do it, or but what if the money's not great, or but what if people say girls can't do it, or whatever. It's just like, I'm enjoying what I'm doing, full stop.
Yeah, I actually get like a little bit of goosebumps. That's like so true. I think like sometimes you can get so distracted by like, so say they'll look like where I want to be when I'm 30, obviously I know where I want to be, like I can feel like where I want to be, and like I know like what I'm doing now, if I carry on doing what I'm doing, like I'm going to be there. But if I put too much focus on where I'm going to be when I'm 30 and I'm not focusing on where I am now, I think you'll just completely stress yourself out and just really like, yeah, obviously there's pressures of life and stuff like that like you have got to take into account, but yeah, like I think it'll just completely like, it'll just throw me off a little bit, because all we can do is just do what we can do now and do the best that we can do now. So I just don't want to be like, 40 looking back with like any regrets really. I just want to make sure that I'm doing everything that I can.
On that, one of my kind of favourite quotes is, forever is composed of nows. And so it's all about like, that's all you can do in this moment. Jordyn, what drives you?
I think it's pretty similar. Like I've always got goals. I always have goals, like long-term, short-term goals that I want to achieve. So I think it's those goals that obviously like drive me, get me up in the morning, and I always like revert back to like, why did you start? Like, because like I said, there is days that I do struggle. Like it's very physical, like training, and I just think like, no, this is your dream job. Like, why are you like doubting it at any point? And I think that's just my drive. It's just like, okay, no, I've always wanted to do this, and there's no second thoughts of like, oh, is this what I want to do? Because it is. Like when I say to myself like, no, this is what I want to do, and I always go back to like thinking, why did I start? Like, what did I want to do? What that little 4-year-old who started Taekwondo, like why did she stay that day? Why did she not like run back?
Why
to her
did she?
dad, and because I loved it.
Yeah.
There was something in me that just thought, no, this is what I want to do. This is so cool. And must have just been an instinct of like, no, like I'm a fighter. Like this is what I want to do. I don't want to go back to ballet. Like, and that's just it. Like I've just thought like, no, what would that little 4-year-old think? Like, what would you want to do now? And that's always my drive is like, why did I start, and just the goals and stuff that I want to achieve.
What I really like about how you approach it as well is the fact that obviously there is that dream, that soul dream, this is what I want to do, Taekwondo is my career, but I also like the flexibility you've given it, because for example for me in my experience, ever since I was 4 or 5, it's like, okay, I'm a footballer, this is it, full stop, nothing else. And you get to this point, you get your professional contract, like both of you, in that similar space, and you're kind of obviously going through it, and it's also like, okay, is this the only thing I want? And you obviously question it, and then you have injuries and everything that goes on, tough times, right? And it's also like, okay, yes, I have this strict thing of this is what I want to do, this is my dream job, but I'm also not limited to it, and that there's flexibility on the edges, not around, okay, I'm not questioning, I'm not taking away from being the best athlete, the best footballer, the best whatever it may be, but I'm also giving myself time and space to do other things. And I also love that you kind of soften the edges, and that you're doing YouTube, you're doing little things like that you enjoy alongside being the best Taekwondo athlete you can be.
Yeah, I think that has always been like very important to me, is not restricting myself. Obviously my priority is training, because it is my job, and that is what I want to do, but it's just having that flexibility of doing like other things. Like I actually do a university course, it's all online, so I don't actually need to go into the uni or anything like that, but sometimes it's just that kind of like break, and it's just that like switch back to reality, like, oh, okay, I've got something else that I can try and do. And even like after training as well, like we all live on the same street, like all the athletes, and we all live together. And we, as athletes, we're always like, oh, should we go to the cinema tonight? Or some days, don't get me wrong, we're after training, we're like, no, like
I can't see anyone.
No, I'll literally be in my room like the whole night. But I think as athletes, especially like on the team, is we do try and like open up a bit more, because I think you can be stuck in such a bubble of like training and
this
of
is
like
who I am, this is who I'm an athlete, full stop.
And I think it's just expanding that of like getting out there, and especially like I've never lived in a place like Manchester, like it's massive, there's so much to do, and I always say, like we always say to each other, like, oh, should we do this at the weekend, or even if it's just like, should we pop to Trafford Centre for like a coffee, like it's just something different, and it just kind of stops you from being restricted in that bubble of like, okay, this is what, like a routine, like you don't want to be constantly like, I get up, I train, I have a nap, then I train, and then I go home, I eat and I sleep. Like I think when you get stuck in that routine, sometimes it can be hard of like to get up in the morning, because it's like I'm doing the same thing. And we do try go out there a bit, and like I said, like we all have the same goals, we all have the same focus, so it's not like anyone's like kind of drifting away or anything like that. And
really well.
Yeah, I think as well, like I think if we ever do see someone struggling, like we've all been there, and it's easy to just be like, yeah, come on, like it's easy to say like, oh, you'll be fine, but when you actually talk to someone who's been through those kind of experiences as well, and it's good to just have those people to like pick you up. And if there is people that we do see that are like a bit down, or maybe a bit more quiet, aren't like probably coming out and like socialising with us as much, we think like, oh, maybe there's something wrong, and that's the good thing about how like close we are as a team, is we do have that opportunity to like speak to each other, and sometimes like just going out for a coffee, put your mind off things. Like we've had bad days in training, and we'll go to Starbucks and we'll just talk about random stuff, nothing about Taekwondo, and it's like, yeah, we needed that break of like just back to reality of like, oh, what do you want to do, like stuff like that, so it's not too restricted.
It sounds like a really brilliant environment, because I think what we get caught up in as athletes, and I know I'm guilty of this, especially in and around your team, is everyone expects the other person to be the athlete and to be like this, and so you don't let down the barriers and connect with people just like normally, like just as normal people, just being friends and being like that. And it's also a great thing to have those connections, relationships with people who are in the sport, because it holds a lot more weight when you can relate to them. And I always think that if we restrict ourselves just to the sport we do and just to the career we have, and we build those foundations of this is who I am, this is what I do, the second that goes wrong, which it can at any point, as we all know, with injuries and obviously the way sport runs, with the pressure and everything that goes under, it's if those foundations crumble in our sport and we've got nothing else to fall back on as a person, not necessarily a job, doesn't even have to be anything, it's just like the friends and the simple things of go and spend time with people, family, or have interests outside of it, doesn't necessarily have to be education or intelligence or something like that. It could be as simple as I can have a weekly thing where I go and see a friend for coffee and not talk about the sport. And it's like those little things that can add to your foundation as a person mean that they won't get brushed over when the storm comes, when you get an injury or when a competition or a fight doesn't go where you want it to. It's being able to go, I'm still strong in who I am. Yes, that's having a bit of a tough time, but I'm still Elliot, or I'm still this person behind all that, and that's okay. And it's being able to detach from what we do under such high pressure and the pressure we put on ourselves already. That I think is a huge step, and even as simple as it may be as getting a coffee or doing something like that has a big difference, and it's a really cool thing to have in that environment.
I completely agree with that. Like for me, like my friends, like obviously I've got my friends like inside boxing and stuff like that, like you said, like they're so great for like when you want to speak to advice or you're both switching off together. But like back at home, like my friends don't have a clue about boxing, like not one.
That's brilliant though.
Like not one clue, and do you understand that? Like obviously, like when I say I'm going training and stuff like that, they understand like that I'm prioritising training. But when it comes to me just going around to like my best friends and stuff like that, like we couldn't be any more different. She's like, some people look at us and they just think like, how are you two best friends? Like I actually don't get it. Honest to God, it's like on one level, it's like another level. But that like works out really well for me, and even like my family and stuff, they're not like me nan is really supportive and wants to know everything. She wants to talk about boxing all the time, or like the rest of my family and that are all like quite chill and just like they like want me to do what's best for me, whether that's boxing or not boxing. But yeah, like that's one thing that like I will put in there for that. Like I do get that from like one of my best friends. So.
Yeah, I think it's brilliant to just get away from it, and it's something so simple has like a really big impact. Chloe, what made you come on the podcast?
Just speaking really, and just getting used to like openly speaking about things, and then obviously when she mentioned about someone else being on it with like a similar story, I was quite intrigued. I was like, I want to meet her. And like our stories are like really quite similar. So like it's been really like it's been good for me to come on here today and speak to you and speak to you also.
What about you, Jim?
Like I said, like this is my first time ever doing like anything like this. So and when you said there was going to be another like female fighter on, I was like, oh, that'll be so cool, like to hear her story. And then like you said, like it is so similar. It's like I was just like excited to get onto it, and like I said, I haven't done anything like this before, so like just to get my story out and just to hear the different questions as well were good as well, because some questions I haven't been asked before, and we do like media stuff like within like the sport, but it's the same typical questions. So like to get different questions and just to hear other sides of it as well is like can intrigue me to get in.
Well, I always think it's fascinating as to, obviously I'm trying to create an environment where athletes can be more human and can talk about these things, and so I always find it really interesting to see why people would come on it in the first place, because they share that openness and that, I guess, sensitivity to like, cool, there's more to it than just what I'm doing exactly. So I always find it really cool, and obviously a big kudos and respect to you guys for being interested in putting yourselves in this space as well and matching me on that level, because I think it's really cool. Would you have any questions for each other that we haven't yet explored?
Yeah, I've got one. So obviously you said like your dad got you into it and coached you. Do you feel like that made your relationship between you and your dad stronger?
Yeah, so when I was younger, my dad like coached me, and we went to competitions together, and it was working really well. And then one competition, I just lost it, and we ended up having an argument on the mat. And I think I must have been about 12 at the time, and that kind of like my mum was like literally like playing referee. She was like, no, like that's
mediating
literally, she was like, she was like, we need to stop this, like maybe like you can't coach her, because a lot of the time I would go to training, and if I had a bad day training, it would bring it back to the house, and that's what my mum was like. She was like, just leave it in the gym, like you need to be dad now, you're not coach. And then I did, so I think it was probably about a year, 2 years out of like, I had a different coach, and then one competition my dad was like, oh, like I need to coach you, because there was no coaches there, and something just clicked. I think because I was a bit more mature as well, it was kind of like, oh, okay, like no, he is my coach, like he's not my dad right now, but he is my coach. And it was just that respect of like, it did end up working, and then he did start coaching me from probably 14 till I came here, and we did have that good relationship. There was still times that we'd bring it back to the house and we'd be arguing, and my mum would be like, get out, like enough, like you need to leave it in the gym if you want to, if you still wanted this to work. And it seemed to work, and it did make us a lot like stronger. I think even now, like you said before, like going home, like your nana's always like, oh, asking about boxing. My dad's the same, he's always asking like, oh, how's training going? And my mum's like, okay, you get like 15 minutes of debrief the week, and then like we're not talking about taekwondo, it's like taekwondo free weekend. And but I think it's because my dad loves it as well, like he's always been involved in it, so he's just as intrigued as like what I am. And I think now that my sister's like, she's kind of coming up like the pathway now, she's in the development team, and so he's still got her, which I think he's like obviously happy with. I think if Tegan does eventually move into this team and move to the senior team, I feel like he might be a bit lost. But yeah, like it did make our relationship a lot stronger, but there was obviously those times it was kind of tough to like separate that dad and coach relationship. But it was more just about maturing, like as me, like, okay, no, I can't stand and have an argument with my dad on the ring, like I need to just leave it and then just get on with it. So
fair enough. Because that's always been like one that like I've like looked at, like some of my friends will like be coached by the dad, and they'll like, I've never seen it go wrong. But for me, I just couldn't picture my dad coaching me. Like, it just baffles me. I look at people and I think that looks all great, like fun games and that. But for me, like, I don't know how I'd cope. But yeah, like I always hear like loads of like success stories of like obviously like the dad coaching like the daughter or son. And I think that's really great.
I think as well, like there is that element of like, he is my dad. So if there was something wrong and I wasn't like, I was maybe holding something in, like if I was like struggling, like maybe if I was injured or something, but I wouldn't tell anyone, my dad knew. He could just be like, there's something wrong with you. I'm like, oh, what do you mean? He's like, I'm your dad, I know when there's something wrong. And that kind of like helped a lot, because it forced me to open up a lot more, which is probably one of my like downfalls, is holding things in, and then eventually it just builds, and then it's like all comes out at once. So that is what, even if like now, like if I'm struggling, and I'll be on FaceTime to my dad, he'll be like, there's something wrong, and I'm like, oh, what do you mean? He's like, I know there's something wrong, like. So that was one good thing, is like he was still my dad, so he still knew like if there was something wrong, like he could always help me as well.
It's a really good question. You're trying to my job. It's I think it's such a fine balance, because the amount of pressure we put on ourselves as kids at that age to do well, and almost obviously attach it to our parents' love and to their support, and almost becomes like, oh, if I do well, then I'll get that off them, and it becomes like, reliant on one or the other. And so in some ways I think it can be really difficult for the kid, but I think at the same time it does give you that intimacy, and that people are going to call you out on it. They want the best for you, and there's probably you could say there's some, depending on the coach you've got, there's this love and support that you wouldn't get off some coaches who struggle to show it or are very detached from it themselves. So I think it is a very fine line, but it's good to hear when people do find that, because I can imagine in some cases there are some awful stories where it's just like, it can really, I guess, take a lot on the kid and put more weight on their shoulders without really realising. But
I've got one. So obviously you mentioned before, like you would have competitions, like you'd have quite a lot of fights at once, and then obviously it changed to just that one fight. Like how does your preparation change, like training camp wise, and like obviously training wise? Was that a big change that obviously when you did go like pro that you had to like work into?
A little bit. It's more like direct. Like, so obviously if I've got something that like I want to work on, like I'm able to communicate well like with my coach, and I'm able to like really work on like that specific area. Whereas obviously when I was boxing up at GB, because like everyone's being trained like kind of like the same way, like you know, I don't know how the setup is, but like so like we'd do like 3 sessions a day, and sometimes like you'd feel like, oh, I could hit more pads today, like I could do with a little bit more like going over this today, but there's just not enough hours or enough coaches like there to kind of get that working. And so I feel like it's changed a lot for me and like my confidence as well, because I'm able to have a bit more input on like the training and stuff, and as well I'm able to like understand the training that I'm doing, so I'm also able to like question things on like why, like how is this benefiting me, and obviously that just gives me a bit more confidence because I know why I'm doing something. If I'm getting sent on like a 10k one, like a kind of, you know, like rather than just being like, yeah, everyone go and do this, and that works, it does work, there's no question about it, but for me, like that's just kind of like the biggest change that's kind of stood out to me, and I'm able to say like, oh, I want to work on this move, so like, and we'll just drill it and drill it and drill it and drill it, where like I'd only really get that when I went home, and I was able to connect with my coach back at home, and then I'd go through it, but yeah, like that's like the big difference for me, and obviously you'll get like a 6 weeks, or if not more, sometimes might be a little bit less, but I'm just constantly in the gym, because like I said, like when it comes down to the night, like I've got no excuses, like it just is what it is, and I've got to know that like I've put me all into it, and that's just, I mean, hopefully that doesn't change, but that's just the mentality that I'm going into it like to begin with, because obviously it is just so new to me too, but I'm just taking that back from like me fight in November, and obviously like as I'm going through a camp now, that's just where my headspace is at, like that could change, but for me that's where I'm at with it.
Yeah.
Again, that's where you're at right now. It's like that's where you're at now. That's really cool to see. I think that individual, like tailored, in tune with this is what I need, this is where I'm at as a boxer right now, makes a huge difference, because obviously confidence huge, and just working on what you want to work on. I can imagine that making like,
obviously I get told what to work on too, but like I understand it, like they'll say like, oh, you need to work on this and this and this, and I'm like, because I feel like I have got like a good boxing brain, and like I am able to like figure things out, so when there's like 2 people or 3 people like that, it just hits the roof, like we're all just like, oh yeah. So that's one thing that I'm really enjoying at the moment.
It must make a big difference, I can imagine. What's it like, obviously being in camp now, preparing second fight in 2-3 weeks, right? 3 weeks?
Yeah, 3 weeks Saturday. Good and excited. Obviously I did, I loved every moment of my debut. I didn't like just watch it on the internet, but like I really loved it, and I wasn't expecting to love it as much as I did, because I didn't know if I'd feel more nervous, or I didn't know how I'd feel, because it's a bit of a different environment. So I was just like I was just taken.
I've watched it, and you were like so comfortable, having a great time.
It all in.
I wasn't expecting that whatsoever, because I was with new coaches, like it was all so new to me, like the interviews and stuff, like I'm not used to that. So when like the tunes come on to like walk into the ring, I was like, yeah. Like my mum was like this is how much my mum knows about boxing. So when I was actually in the fight, my mum was going, 1, 2, 3, go! So I'm laughing. Everyone thinks I'm laughing at this girl, and I'm boxing, I'm not.
Oh, is that it? No way.
My mum's just going, 1, 2, 3, go! And I was thinking, is that my mum? And then I was like, just chilling in the ring, just doing whatever, and then I hear it again, and I was, oh my god, it cracked me up. And when I watched the fight back and I heard it, I was like, oh my god, like that is just
I'm gonna listen out for that and watch it again now.
Because my mum's head does go a little bit when she's watching me. She didn't want me to be boxing at all, but now she loves that I do it, because she sees how much it's benefited me as a person outside the ring as much as inside the ring. I think the way I look at things in a boxing gym, I'd also look at things like that outside, and I don't know, it's pretty crazy really.
On that last one, it's brilliant to inspire the 2 parts of the podcast. One, to inspire people, we're all doing the same thing here, we're all, whether you're working as a banker or as you're working a thing, we're all trying to figure it out just as much as the other.
Yeah.
We're all clueless. We're all like, we're all scared. We're all trying to do it ourselves or whatever. And at the same time, these athlete careers are intensified into a 10-year, like squished together, loads of pressure. In some situations, obviously, it's make or break and all these different things, and it's really intensified. No different to someone's 50-year career, but all in squished together. And so there's these perspectives and approaches that athletes take that people aren't necessarily, it's taking them longer or whatever, for whatever reasons, why obviously people love the sport so much and why people follow these characters and these athletes, because it is so fascinating to see how they deal with it. And it's exactly what you just said, is that those lessons that we learn from sport, this is why we're talking about it, can be applied to anyone and everything in life, and the ability for you as an athlete, for both of you, to use them and to be able to balance them and to open yourself up. Like, I'm not just going to be the athlete when I go to the gym, I can also be an athlete when I go home, but I also am taking myself and who I am to the gym, as well as just being that around my friends and my family. And it's that, I guess, brilliant kind of flow and combination of being that everywhere you go and not being stuck in one box this day or that day, not being black or white, and being completely open to it all. Where's your future at? What's the dream? You both mentioned your goals. You both said I can probably imagine what they both are. But what is, if you were to say in the future, what is it that you can come back on this podcast if you'll ever do that again and say, this is what I've achieved, this is who I am now, and it's this is what I want to do?
I'd look at it like, it's hard because you've just been you say no. But obviously world titles are in the goal, we've already discussed that, but obviously it's also about having creating a good life as well, and for not just me but the people behind me. So I do want to have kids and stuff like that, and I do want to be able to tell them the stories of what I had to go through to achieve success. I think that's actually my main reason why, to be fair. I think that's why when I come to a hurdle, I will always try and find a way to get over it, whether it's under it or around it, or I'll just get past it, because I think there's going to be a time where I'm telling my story to someone else and I can't tell them to get over that hurdle when I cracked at the hurdle, really. So I think it's more so things like that that's the main goal. But obviously you've got the boxing goals within, and just winning world titles and just being up there with the big names and just creating a very successful life for myself and the others behind me.
I think on Taekwondo goals is obviously the obvious, I want to be European, world and Olympic champion. But for more life goals, I want to just be able to look back on this experience that I've had in life and just think that I had no regrets. I think that's one of the main things for me, is I don't want to be looking back like you said, to my kids and telling them something and then thinking, oh, but I didn't do this because I was worried about this, or I just want to look back and think of this experience as okay, this was part of my life and this is what I done. And probably similar with boxing as well, Taekwondo's quite a short career. It's not you can do it when you're 50, 60, you do retire quite early, and it's just setting myself up for the future, as in to be a GB athlete is a great thing to go ahead in life with. So I think it's just setting myself up for a good future after Taekwondo as well. So just looking back on that too.
I remember my train of thought, because you both mentioned the same thing, and that it goes back to that autobiography that I was on about, is that the people who create these incredible stories and people look up to are the ones who chapter after chapter kept coming back, kept writing their story and not just stopping because they think they finished it at that point. And it seems and it's very inspiring to be around the two of you, and that you're both both in the best way. You're both present with what you're creating now and enjoying it, looking to inspire, looking to take every moment in as you can. But at the same time, you want to write more, you want to experience, you want to create these incredible lives, and it's really cool to see and to hear. We finish every episode, and there's one question of what makes you more than an athlete? What makes you human?
Don't go first.
I'm gonna have to think about this one now. I think because for me, I did mention obviously in school I was Jordyn Smith, who does Taekwondo, but now as I'm older, like now that it's my job, it's not like it's kind of like, oh, that's Jordyn. Like it's not like I'm known as Jordyn Smith who does Taekwondo, because it is my job. Like I've kind of made it to like the start of my journey, and I think what makes me more is just like I am a normal person as well. I do normal people things. Like I do my university. Like I go out with my friends. I don't just prioritise like always doing one thing, because like I said before, it can push you into that bubble of like a mental like stress of like just focusing on one thing. So I think because I do kind of push myself out there a bit more, like it's not like Taekwondo this, Taekwondo that, like I do other things, and I think that just like makes me more of like an actual normal person as well.
I love it.
I'd say my family, just because like the person I am when I'm with them, like it is more just like through like love, and like obviously they love me for who I am, and I'm thoughtful, and like I love to do things for them and they love to do things for me. And then the same goes for my friends. Like I said, most of them don't have a jar clue about boxing. My boyfriend as well, he's actually a fighter like me, but we don't speak about fighting like with each other. Sometimes we'll train like with each other, but we'll actually enjoy it. Like we won't get too like involved in like, it'll be like a playful session. So yeah, it's things like that for me. But like the main things like family, like definitely, just because like when I'm with them, like I'm not a fighter like at all. Like I'm just your mum's daughter, or you know.
And it gives you the space to go back and fight and be recharged and do what you want to do and do what you enjoy.
Yeah.
Thank you both so much for coming on. It's been a brilliant conversation, and yeah, thank you for both coming.
Thank you very much. Thank you.